Good morning, Jenny and Aaron. Is that Aaron? Happy 2021. I am happy to be here this morning. I'm assuming and hoping nobody had any huge New Year's Eve plans. I know we just stayed in my pajamas. We ordered sushi, actually. That was our big treat. But good morning and thanks for joining me bright and early. Couple of big things tonight at 6 p.m. on the High Conflict Divorce Coach Certification Program Facebook page. We will be announcing the winner of the scholarship for May. So if you have already, the cutoff has already passed, but if you have submitted a scholarship, we do give away one scholarship for each 6-week session, and the next one will be out in August of 2021. We will be announcing the winner of the May scholarship 6 p.m. Pacific time on the One Mom's Battle Facebook page. No, sorry, not on the One Mom's Battle, on the High Conflict Divorce Coach certification page. So make sure, well, the winner will be notified directly, but we've received so many scholarship applications that we won't be able to reach out to each person individually, but you can find out details there. So make sure you tune in and follow along if you've applied. This next week, I have a 3-month-long Zoom group session starting. It will be January 6th, February 3rd, and March 3rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And that's Pacific time. So if you're on the East Coast, it might be a little bit late for you. These groups have been amazing. I actually just read an email this morning from someone from my last group who asked if she could pop into this new one and just share what an amazing experience it's been for them. They have, my goal when I connect these groups of people is very much like the retreats that I used to do in person pre-pandemic, where it's getting to know each other, making this into your village. Because even if you have, I know in my situation, even really well-intentioned family members or friends, it's hard for them to truly understand what you are going through. And so these little groups, pods of people, they can bounce ideas off of each other. I got this email, how would you respond? Because it's so much easier to help someone else respond when you aren't triggered by the situation. And I still do have a handful of spaces available for that. It's $299. We will come together on January 6th to meet for the first time, hour and a half on Zoom, get to know each other. That's that group bonding thing. Some of the groups have decided on their own to meet weekly. So I will facilitate one Zoom session each month for an hour and a half each. And then, but you're on your own also to schedule outside of that. So these can be really fantastic ways to stay connected if you are feeling isolated or feel like you could use some additional support. The second session on February 3rd, we're going to come together and talk about strategy. What does strategy look like when you're in the family court system against a toxic person who thrives in this environment? And then March 3rd will be our closing, what happens next to the group and where do they go from there. So if you're interested in joining me, you can send an email to tina@tinaswithin.com. And I will just put Zoom group in the subject line and I will send you the details. Good morning, Jane Smith, and happy 2021. Let's hope this year brings some normalcy to our world. It is just, good morning, Carrie. just so much division and chaos going on out there. But let's talk about the narcissist and family court. I have the printed off questions for the week. And the first one is depositions. My little small print reminder, I'm not an attorney, cannot give legal advice, not qualified to give legal advice, don't want to give legal advice. Always consult with your attorney on any of these questions. We're very much a support group that comes together to, help each other out. Hello, Taz. Good morning. Always, when we're talking about these things, check the comments, because this is a great example. I've personally never been deposed by my ex-husband's attorneys, which is a small miracle, but I feel like they just didn't have anything on me to, they would be grasping for straws, and he didn't want to spend the money. So, in my situation, when I did finally get an attorney last year, it was something that I feel my attorney intimidated my ex by, because he sent him a huge, request for information and deposed him and had it set on calendar. And I think it freaked my ex out. And so we already had him somewhat backed into a corner, and that kind of pushed it even further. But make sure you're following the comments, because I don't have all the answers, but some of our group members have been at this for a long time, and I learn things from them all the time. So depositions, somebody said, can we discuss these? From what I know about them, and I have lots of clients, who go through these monthly, one of the things that an attorney told me early on about depositions is take your time in responding. This is all going to be typed up. It's being transcribed. That transcription doesn't show if you took a full minute to sit and think before answering your question. I know so many of us get in fight or flight mode, no matter what it is. And when we're nervous, it's not an environment that we thrive in. And so we tend to offer more than what was asked. We tend to ramble. And so I can say, if I were being deposed, my strategy from everything I've learned over the years would be slow and steady. I would be the tortoise. I would be really pausing and giving thoughts, because this is a game to opposing counsel. They want to trip you up. They want to catch you. They want to twist your words. And so I would, role play quite a bit before going into something like that. I would think of every, the other side. The angles that they're going to try to go for, whether it's financial, it's the kids, whatever it is. So I would type up a list of the worst questions I think I could be asked. And I would give them to a trusted friend or family member and have them throw them at me out of order, all different situations, and just practice slowing my breath, getting myself centered, and thinking about the question before I respond. But if anybody else has an experience or tips that they want to share, please put it in the comments. I would love to, again, I read so much of what we write here, and I learn right along with all of you. So please feel free to do that. And I wanted to deviate a little bit. Somebody asked, Tina, how did you collect child support when your ex deviated or evaded paying? Child support was a huge strategy piece in my case, huge leverage. It didn't start out that way, because back in the beginning, the first 3 years, I was absolutely dependent on him to feed my kids. Because of his overspending, obsessive spending, and deception, we were $1.6 million in debt, mostly behind my back, by the time our marriage ended. And so we lost our home, our cars, both of our businesses. We each had a business. Everything went up in smoke. And so I was out of a job, and he had secured a job making very good money. I was absolutely dependent on him with 2 little girls in preschool. I couldn't even afford their preschool bill. So in the beginning, I was dependent on that. My goal from day one was to get out from under that control, because that's very much, the biggest button for the narcissist. So those first few years, I tried to hold him accountable multiple times, subpoenaed his HR records, paycheck stubs, W-2s, all of those things. As time went on, I stopped pursuing it. I stopped going after it, because I knew his arrears balance would just keep growing and growing, and that with each month that arrears balance grew, I would continue to have more and more leverage over him. And that's very much how my case played out. First of all, he had been prohibited from seeing the kids since 2014. The judge took away his ability to even call them by phone. And so he was on deck paying from 2014. Well, he wasn't paying, but he was supposed to be. And he did through garnishment. There were some payments made, but that arrears balance grew to $100,000. And he basically signed off on his kids to get away from that debt, because it had affected his passport, at different times his driver's license. And so, I didn't sit down and go, this is exactly my strategy. Your strategy in these situations needs to be very fluid and changes often. But my, overall strategy was, I would rather eat cereal for 3 meals a day or top ramen than be under his control with finances. And so my plan very much, and you have to be careful and consult with an attorney, because you don't want to be seen as extorting, using the kids to extort him for money or leverage, or, bartering for human life. It is a very, very delicate situation that some attorneys aren't even able to handle. We were successful in it. Good morning, Katya from Florida. Good morning. So that's the long and short. The child support arrears ended up being the biggest blessing, and it's what protected my kids in the end. So, but the journey to get there, 9-10 years, it's a difficult one. And I when I sum it up, it's hard to do it justice. We were in court 13 times 1 year alone. How did you get the courts to shut down his visitation? I wish I could answer that in a short nutshell version. It's a long story. Lots and lots of, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, chipping away at it. I very much call it the chip away mentality. In our court system, it is a 50-50 system, but my mentality is that there's nothing final in family court, even with final custody orders. You never know what's around the next corner. And so my mentality to the court was, okay, you're ordering this visitation parenting time schedule this month. I know that's not in the best interest of my kids. So I'm going to keep chipping away at it until I can go to sleep at night, satisfied that they're safe. In my situation, I chipped away a lot because my kids were not safe. And eventually we got full custody with no overnight visits. And then I continued chipping away, and then it went to supervised visits permanently. We all know the narcissist can't handle that on a permanent basis. And then the next year when he tried to re-enter their lives, it caused trauma. I put it back in front of the court, and we were able to shut down his access completely. My book, this One Mom's Battle, tells my full story. So if you're interested in knowing exactly how my situation has unfolded, and what my strategies were and insights, that would be the book to get. Okay, next question. Law enforcement doesn't want to get involved. She specifically said, claims of harassment. When we're dealing with law enforcement, just like any other area of the family court system, you're going to have those who are educated on domestic violence and who are compassionate, and then you're going to get those who are absolutely not and can even be abusive or traumatizing. There's a huge disconnect from my experience and from what I watch all of you go through between the family court system and law enforcement. Law enforcement wants to wash their hands of it and say it's a, civil or a domestic issue, put it in front of the court. It can feel really frustrating. I had a lot, hello, Mel from Ontario. We had a lot of law enforcement interaction in my situation, and 90% of the time it was a good experience. They were compassionate. 10% of the time, I call it out often, Atascadero Police Department here in San Luis Obispo County, horrific. They traumatized my kids, traumatized me. I am not a fan at all. So why don't they want to get involved? Their hands are tied, in my opinion. They want to put it in front of the court. Then the court wants to know, do you have proof of this? You're like, well, no, the police didn't even want to open a case on it. I always used to ask them to just log it. If you could just create a log, the way I thought of it was a paper trail. And again, with so many of these things, whether it's the court, it's the police, you have to advocate for yourself. So if you're being harassed, I would look up what the laws are in your area, what laws are being violated, and push them on that. You have to do your education in your area and go in and build the case for them. Here are the logs, stalking logs. You can create your own. You can find them online. We have one at One Mom's Battle. If you go to our website and click resources and scroll down, we have some forms and things like that if you just want something already created, easy. But a lot of it comes down to documentation. You building the case for the court, for whoever. I tell people, even if you have the best attorney in the world, you're still your own best advocate. I had more anxiety turning my case over to an attorney last year, even though he was wonderful and I trust him. It's a lot, to go from representing myself and driving the bus to sitting in the very back seat. It was really hard. Heather says, my ex verbally abuses me, calls me names. I have been told judges do not care about this abuse and it will not help my case at all. Again, depends on the judge. Some of them do. My judge would have cared. I know of a lot of other judges who would care as long as your side of the street is squeaky clean. And good morning, everybody. I see a bunch of new people joining us. There are absolutely times where I'm working with a client for a while and, I'm hearing about the abuse and things like that. And then I'll have the client send me an example, of a string of communication for our next coaching session. And once I start reading it, I'm kind of cringing, going, maybe the attacks aren't as severe, but you're jabbing, you're poking, you're engaging. And when the court can, the lazy route for them is to say you're both high conflict. And that's where keeping our side of the street so sparkling clean is critical. And I feel like that's one area, the first 2 years of my battle, I had no idea what I was doing. There was no information out there at that time on high conflict divorces, on narcissistic abuse. And so the first 2 years, I made all kinds of mistakes. But it was that point where I started thinking of it more in terms of strategy, watching the attorneys, watching how they handle it, the importance of knowing who your judge is. And I've shared this example before. If I were in my local courtroom, we have 2 courthouses in my county. There are 3 different judges or commissioners. I would present my exact same case 3 different ways depending on which judge I was in front of. And if I shadowed an attorney jumping from courtroom to courtroom in my area, you would think it were 2 different people, because they know the likes, the dislikes, the buttons of each judge, and where not to push them. And so, or when to push them. So there are so many things, and that's where I will say connecting with people in your area to share notes, to get to understand the intricacies of your local court system is critical. If you, if you are looking to connect, that's where our state chapters of One Mom's Battle can be really helpful. You can just Google OMB for One Mom's Battle state chapters, and it'll come up. There's a link to a blog that I wrote on exactly how to go about applying for your state chapter. We do have strict requirements to join, but that's for the safety of the group members. And so, Joan says, I have a GAL who is so uneducated to the point of being scary in her judgments. She is acting as a mental health professional without credentials. It's scary. And a lot of these people, even if they didn't start out, highly narcissistic, even little bits of narcissism, on that scale or that spectrum, a position of power over periods of time, I do feel like heightens their God complex. And, that's a huge part of the problem in the system. Volga says, I am a father, have experienced domestic violence. Where should I start first to illustrate the emotional abuse of the children? Find the best interest statutes in your area. That's where I would start. I can't give you legal advice, but if I were in your shoes, every situation is so different. So that same question asked by 3 different people, I would probably work with you to find 3 different answers, because it's going to be, I'm a fan of focusing on patterns of behavior, and anyone is allowed to be a parent. A-holes, liars, pathological liars, narcissists, they're allowed, in the eyes of the court system, they have rights to be a parent. And so I would never personally go in trying to prove that my ex is a horrible person. For me, I work to paint that picture of the lack of credibility, the dishonesty, and patterns of behavior that show how he's affecting the kids. Not that he's a jerk and I don't like him or I'm afraid of him. Those things are more, they don't really weigh in, unfortunately. So, okay, next question. X claims he only makes $15,000 a month. That's a lot. Yet I know he's hiding money. What can I do? For me, and it's an unpopular opinion with a lot of people, I got to the point where, I touched on this earlier. My goal was to get out from under that. I've been caught up in trying to prove that he's hiding money, hiring PIs to show he lives in a $7 million mansion in San Francisco. I've been through all of that, and it exhausts you. I had limited bandwidth, and it was mentally exhausting because and on the other side, they're getting a high off of it. Watching you try to prove they know what they're doing. They get a high every time they move, the shell game and all of that. For me, I found that energy that I was exerting was better spent trying to rebuild my life financially, trying to, there was a point I was working my own stuff, doing coaching and consulting and 2 other jobs. And I didn't like the power he had over me, but that is, again, an unpopular opinion. Some people are, really, your children are entitled to that money. Absolutely. And there's no shame in needing that. But, you have to really weigh it all out for yourself personally. How much are you willing to invest in trying to, keep up with him? A lot of these people, they're so skilled at it that you'll never, you're going to spend thousands of dollars to get pennies. And that's unfortunately what I see with so many people, and it breaks my heart. So, will you ever beat this person at their game? No, probably not. They're very skilled at this. They get a high off of it. So, somebody asked, what are some examples of how moms can make money? I can only speak from my experience. When I started off in 2009, rock bottom, no job, nothing, I was just putting myself out there, trying to find any entry level because I had been an entrepreneur for so many years. Putting myself out there, I ended up finding an entry level job that allowed me to work from home for an advertising agency, marketing, PR. And so I was an account coordinator, very little money, but I was so thankful to have it that, I worked late into the night. They were very flexible with my schedule. And I remember the owner of the company said, "I'm only hiring single moms after this. You are the hardest worker I've ever come across." And so, and right now with the pandemic and people being out of work, you may have to get even more creative. I've got that entrepreneurial mindset, which has served me very well over, the years, and having to reinvent myself multiple times with the narcissist and the financial abuse. But again, trying to prove that he's hiding money, is it worth it? And maybe if he's making that much and, a lot of times where you as a couple had agreed that you'd be staying at home raising the kids, some of the courts do care about that and will hold him accountable. But it's, a judge recently said to me, "It's not what you know, it's what you can prove." Their hands are tied by, what they can allow in. And so the burden is really on you to prove these things. And that's the hard question. Good morning, Deanna. Heather says, "I rebuilt my life financially. I took online classes and graduated with my MBA. Now I make more than my ex." Cheers to that. Congratulations. That's wonderful. Erica says, "I've worked 2 jobs 6 days a week. You can do it too." It's hard. I look back at that part of my life and it's a blur. And, if I have any addiction, it's work. I love what I do, helping other people. So, but it wasn't just handed to me. I've worked very, very hard and very long hours to do what I do today. So, all right. All right. So next question. Let's see. Last question of the day. "My ex has destroyed me. We are basically homeless and living with family." First of all, I am so sorry. It's I know when my battle first started in 2009, I went from living a very nice life. I call my fake fancy life. It wasn't real. I didn't know that. My ex had created very much a facade. And so I went from that to, I found myself sitting on an old crickety bed in a women's shelter with my little girls. And, literally went from a nice life to having all my cars repossessed. I was literally going into car dealerships with my wedding ring, begging them to trade me. I was desperate. So I get it. I hear you. I see you. Um, I'm thankful that you have family. That was a scary part for me because my family's 2,000 miles away. And I was going to churches and trying to collect money to come up with a deposit. We just helped a local mom here in my area last week to, she had been on a housing list and finally secured housing, but she needed a $1,300 deposit. And so, and I was, that weighs heavily on my heart because I've been in those exact shoes where I was dependent on strangers for a $200 donation here or there to come up with that deposit and first month's rent. Really connect with organizations in your area. Get on any waiting lists that they have. I know this mom, it took her a year but she gets her keys this next week. And it's been an amazing thing to be a part of that. And I hope and wish that for you as well. But no, you aren't alone. I'm glad I couldn't see the full. It's like the Martin Luther King quote about the stairway. I'm so glad I couldn't see all of the things in front of me because it would have left me paralyzed with fear. But I also couldn't see all of the blessings in front of me, and there were equal amounts of blessings. Sometimes you have to really be open to those. And, I found yesterday my old gratitude list from 2009. And there were seriously days that I was just grateful for my next breath or for the sky being blue that day. Some of the things I wrote on my gratitude list were so basic and so simple. And it made me tear up to look back at that time in my life. So I will tell you, during those times for me, connecting with churches, connecting with organizations in your area, but also leaning into gratitude. And I know I hear that from a lot of clients also, on those darkest days, it's sitting down with a gratitude list. So, that can be very helpful. Tracy, hi, Tracy. Tracy says, I work 12-hour days to rebuild. Absolutely. I'm still rebuilding my life. When back in 2009, my credit score was 500 and low 500s. I mean, it was bad, maybe even lower than that if it can go lower than that. I had to file bankruptcy because of the debt my ex-husband put us into. I was having to get, as a 34-year-old woman, asking people to co-sign for apartments, for things like that. Very humbling experience. But you're going to make it through this, and all of you will. It's you can't see what's in front of you, and that's where faith and gratitude come into play. So I highly recommend both, and stay connected. These groups of survivors are a wonderful resource. I've seen it in a couple of my state chapters where moms are sharing recipes for, quick, easy meals to make. If you're in one of my chapters and it's not very active, start it up, get conversations started, because there is so much power in these communities of people who get it, and you don't have to explain yourself. You're instantly validated. So, and again, if you want to join my Zoom group, which starts January 6th, it is very much about divorcing a narcissist in the family court system, but more specifically, child custody battles. You can email me at tina@tinaswithin.com. Happy 2021 to all of you. And thank you so much for joining me this morning for coffee. Take care, everyone.